at all to the call. Like I said earlier to Hazel, my thoughts and prayers go out to all of you that are down in Atlanta. It's kind of hard for me to understand as I look out my office window and see literally multiple feet of snow sitting outside my window. It's hard for me to understand the impact that that small bit of snow can have, but I certainly have been following what's going on down there, and hopefully today will be the day that you get things back into order. There's nothing worse than being sort of disrupted, uncertain, and certainly ill-prepared for what took place down there. So hopefully things get back to normal today for you guys. I am just outside of Toronto. My name is Karen Hill, and like I said, I'd like to welcome all of you to the call. This morning's call is based on some questions that Carolyn Lockhart sent to me a few days ago on a skill that she'd like to see discussed, and she had some very specific questions about it, so hopefully throughout this morning I will answer those questions. But she was asking basically about the skill of phone prospecting. So that's what we're going to talk about this morning. And there's really two questions that you need to ask yourself. What is prospecting? And the second question that I think is even more important is, what do I get paid for here at Zija? And I'd like to tell you some really good news, that prospecting really goes back to skills that you learned in kindergarten. And so some people say to me, Karen, how do you have a belief in every single person that comes through the doors that joins Zija? How do you have that belief? Well, I have that belief because although some people may not have finished public school, high school, they may not have gone on to college or university, so they don't have a tremendous education, but I have that belief because usually everyone that's put in front of me has attended kindergarten or grade 1. And the skills that you need are developed way back then. You know, I've got a huge bookcase of books in front of me. And many of them you hear about on calls. You hear leaders recommending various things that you should read and take a look at. I would question whether you have been told about the next couple of books. I'll just share a couple with you. I do have a few more that are kindergarten books. They encompass the skills that we need to build this business. And those skills are as simple as this. What did your mom tell you when you went away to kindergarten? Go away, you're going to have fun because you're going to make new friends. And she told you how to do that. She told you to play with them nicely, to share, to do all the things that you needed to make new friends. And so you developed that skill in kindergarten. The other skill that the kindergarten teacher helped you develop was show and tell. How to get up and talk to others. How to share a story. And so you learned those two skills way back when. And I'd like to suggest to you this morning that prospecting is nothing more than those two skills. And I have a book on my bookshelf called Where's Waldo? Because that's all prospecting is all about. And if you don't have a Where's Waldo book, I'd suggest that you get one to add to all those other complicated selling and how do I do this and how do I do that books, because this business is all about Where's Waldo? Making friends, show and tell. All you're really doing with prospecting is searching for Waldo. So for those of you that are familiar with that book, you'll know that there are literally hundreds of people on every page, and you're looking for one individual Waldo with that silly red and white striped hat and those big glasses. Now, if I opened up the book and I looked at one or two people on a page, it would take me literally forever to get through this book. So the basis that you have to build your business on is not one or two people a day, the same as looking for Waldo. I have to look at least 10 every single day. And why do I have to do that? Because it's simple. ultimately find customers for Zija. They may be customers that are consuming product, or they may be customers that go the step further who then begin to share this business opportunity with others. But that's what I'm paid for. I'm paid for looking through all the different Waldos, all the different people to come to the Waldos that want to be a customer of Zija. That's what I'm getting paid for. Do I get paid for training? Is Zija going to send me a check this week because I was on this call with you? No. Are they going to send me a check because I was on social media and putting information about Zija out on social media? No. Are they going to pay me because I organized my desk and it looks a little bit better this morning than it did yesterday? No. Those are all things that need to be done to move your business forward. The only thing that they really pay me for is literally finding new people who will then become part of Zija. So they pay me to sift through the hundreds of people that are on every page of the book in front of me to find the Waldos. That's what they pay me for. And so how, on a part-time basis, can I show Zija to enough people to find the Waldos? Most of the people, 80% of the people on your teams are doing this part-time. And so how do they show it to enough people to find the Waldos? Well, the answer is plain and simple, and each one of you are on it right now, and it's the phone. The phone is the answer to your future, whether it's listening to a training like this and gaining more knowledge, or whether it's doing what you have to do every single day, those skills that you learned in kindergarten, make new friends, and show and tell. It's that simple. That's what prospecting is. And so it's going to take 10 outbound calls per day for the part-time or the full-time person to make this thing work. And then some of you will have listened to Debbie Callahan a few weeks back, and she talked about keeping a journal and keeping track of those 10 phone calls and literally writing them in a journal so that you can keep track of them on a daily basis. And so one of the questions that I was asked by Carolyn was sort of how do I go about that? What do I say? How do I go through that process? Well, I start by finding the 10 names and the 10 numbers, and there are so many different ways I can go through that in another training on how to find the names if that's important to you. Certainly send me a message and I'll do that. But here's what I do. I literally have a name and a phone number in front of me, and I go through the process of making those 10 phone calls. I try to do it early in the morning. That I find most effective because the rest of us all have busy days and lives and things get running, and if I leave it till the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily get done. So I do it first thing in the morning, and here's what I do. I literally pick up the phone and I start with the first number and I call. And if I get a disconnect, I still write that person in my journal as an outbound phone call. It doesn't really matter what happens on the other end. All 10 phone calls count. If I get someone that answers, I literally tell them how I found their name, and I ask them a simple question: do they keep their options open for additional streams of income? So, hi Steve, it's Karen Hill calling. I'm calling. I came across your name on the internet. It looks like you've got a successful plumbing business, and I was wondering, do you keep your options open for additional streams of income? And then I'm quiet and wait. They're either going to say yes or no. If they say no, I say, great, appreciate your time, have a great day. And off the phone I go. If they say yes, I say, Steve, I've got very limited time. I only had a few minutes to kind of reach out to you to see if you were open. I'd love to talk further, but how about if I send you a link and we chat in a couple of days? Does Monday sound good for you? How about at the same time, 9 o'clock in the morning on Monday? And that's how I do it. So I get their email, I send the link. I'm looking to build a friendship. Do we build a friendship on the first meeting? No. We build a friendship over time. And so that's what I'm attempting to do, attempting to interact with them a number of times. So it's very quick and simple, that first phone call. If I don't get an answer, I leave a message. And it's, hi Steve, it's Karen Hill calling. I was just wondering if you could give me a call. Area code 519-202-0400. Look forward to chatting. That's it. I don't tell them it's Karen Hill from Vija. I don't tell them anything about why I'm calling them or nothing. It's just a simple message. And then I wait for them to call me back, because what am I doing? I'm sifting and sorting. What do you think the chances are that somebody will build a business if they call me back? Yeah, they're going to, because they've just shown me one of the key things that you're going to have to do to build a huge business here, and that is to talk to people that you don't know. I mean, we only have so many people in our warm market, and I challenge all of you that are on the phone that you probably haven't talked to all those warm market people yet. But having said that, you're still going to have to move forward and talk to people that you don't know. And so by that person calling me back on that simple message shows me that they're willing to talk to people they don't know. And so I'm sifting and sorting. I don't care whether they call me back or they don't call me back. In fact, I just put them in that journal. I write them down, Steve, and I left him a message. And then I leave some lines to see whether he calls me back. Now, occasionally I will call, and I really love the energy of somebody's voice message, their voicemail message. Whatever they've said, the energy, whatever, I'm like, I'd like to work with that person. So those people I will call back. For the most part, if they don't call me back, I'm sifting and sorting. I'm looking for people that will do that. And so I don't care whether they call me back. What I care is that I've made the phone call, I've left the message, and let's see if they call me back. And so on occasion, I will call someone back, but the majority I don't. And if I call someone back, I immediately give them an out. So let's say I wait for a week, I don't hear from the person that I really like their answering machine, I call them back, and I literally give them an out. And it's as simple as, I know that you were probably away on vacation, just wondering if you could give me a call back, when you get back into the office or when you get back home. That's how I would leave that message, so that they feel like they can call me back if it's been greater than a week and they haven't had a chance. Because that sometimes happens. People just get busy, they forget, and then there's kind of something sheepishly that's sort of like, if I don't call them back in a day or two or whatever, then it's like, oh man, now I'm embarrassed to call them back. So I give them a second opportunity to call me. And if they don't call me at that point, then on again to the next person. I'm just looking for Waldo. I can't create Waldo. Waldo is there in the picture. I just have to go through enough people to find Waldo. So, what do I say was one of the other questions that Carolyn gave to me. What do I say? And what you're saying to people as you're interacting with them through that prospecting period of time is what their questions are. What are people thinking? If they're talking to you and looking at Vija, what are some of the things that people are thinking about? And when it comes to product, they've really got two basic questions. It's, is the product safe, and what will the benefits be from me taking the products? Those are kind of the questions that people are thinking when they're looking at products. It's like, will these products help me? What will my benefits be? And are the products safe? That's it. And as far as the business is concerned, there's a few more questions. They're asking themselves, is this business simple and easy? Can I have a good time doing it? They already have a job, right? They don't want another job. They want something that would be fun and they would enjoy doing. They're asking themselves, can I make money? They're asking themselves, will there be people to help and support me? That's a big question, because they have a boss that doesn't necessarily support or help them, and their coworkers are trying to get ahead of them. So they'd like to be in an environment where there's support. So that's a question that's going on in their mind. They're asking themselves, is the timing right for them at this point? And they're asking themselves, can they even squeeze it into their busy schedule? So those are some of the questions that you want to be answering. What is it that I say? A lot of people think that they have to list all the different facts. It's not. People are just looking for the benefits and whether or not, do I think that I can do this? You want to certainly talk from a sense of urgency. I'm going forward with this, with or without you sort of thing. Fear of loss will move people forward. And stories literally will help answer the questions. So the more stories you tell, So stories about the products, that brings out the benefits, right? So the person's listening to the stories that have occurred with products, they're going, oh, well, I could benefit from that particular area. Same thing with the business. You know, you talk about individuals that had busy lives, they were working, 60 to 80 hours, and the person's going, man, I'm working 60 to 80 hours, and that person was able to fit it in. You're answering those simple questions in the telling of stories, and that's why three-way phone calls, sending of links and stories, and all those things are very important in the process of prospecting. And we've talked about some of those skills. We talked about the three-way phone call last week and that particular skill. There are some things to keep in mind. There's something called the information threshold. And that it really, people say, well, what do I send? Give me this, I send article number 1, or I send, this video, or I send this, or what. The information threshold is what determines what you're sending to people. So you listen to what the people have to say. That will give you clues as to what to send them. The information threshold gives you direction on what to send individuals. So what I mean by that is that you send different things to different people depending on who they are, and what they respond as you ask them questions. You send different information on the product to a doctor than you do to a plumber. You send different information to an athlete than you do to a couch potato. I mean, it's that simple. And remember that information threshold, I mean, if you send a complicated document listing all the different things that are in the Zija products and whatnot to a plumber, they're going to be like, pardon? Like, what does this mean? But you send that to a doctor, and it all makes sense. So the information threshold is important on what do I send. There's no cookie cutter pieces that you can send individuals. The other thing to keep in mind is there's something called the credibility tree. And this relates to who is sharing the information. So if the person that's sharing the information is over 50% in the credibility tree, then the source is credible. If they're under 50% in the credibility tree, then the source is not credible and the person will not be listening to the information. So what's the credibility tree in regards to health? Well, in regards to health, you yourself or themselves as the prospect, they have their own credibility of 95%. So information that you know about your own body, you have a 95% credibility rate about yourself. And your prospect will have a 95% credibility rate about themselves. Their doctor will have an 80% credibility. So if their doctor is telling them something about their health, they're listening to it because their doctor has an 80% credibility on the credibility tree. Experts in the field of health and wellness will have a 60% credibility. And then from there, no one else scores above 50%. So if you're talking to your next door neighbor, you don't have any credibility when you talk about health and wellness. The FDA is even worse. It's down at 40%. People that are selling products. So if you're trying to sell products to your neighbor, you got about a 20% credibility. So it's important. They are experts about their health and wellness, and they're doctors. And the third is experts in the field. So that's why the three-way phone call becomes so critical in your prospecting process, because you're not the expert to the people that you're talking to. Either they know you and they don't know you as an expert, or they don't know you and they know nothing about you, and so you can't possibly be an expert unless you get through that three-way phone call process. Same is true about athletics. When it comes to athletics, they themselves score 95%. Their coaches and trainers score in around the 80%, and then experts in the field, again, score at 60%. So it's important that you follow that credibility when you're providing information. Carolyn also wanted to know a little bit about the follow-up process, and particularly she wanted to kind of know, like, how do I go about it? When do I do it? Well, there's one golden rule about follow-up, and that golden rule is it's like a game of chess. I make a move, and then the player opposite me makes a move. You go back and forth in the game of chess. That's the golden rule to follow up. You want that same back and forward. I send them a link, they look at it. I put them on a conference call, they're there and available to be on it. There's a back and forth going on. I'm talking to them, sharing information, they're asking questions. I ask questions, they respond. There's a back and forth going on. It's a game of chess. And so after all, you're literally looking for the Waldos. So if somebody's not doing that back and forth like a game of chess or like a game of tennis, the back and forth across the net, then on to the next person. Because that's not your Waldo. If they're not going back and forward with you, they're not your Waldo. So I follow up usually 24 to 48 hours after the first contact, 3 to 4 days after that, 7 days out, 14 days out, and then it spreads out 6 months, 12 months. She also wanted to know a little bit about the method, and I use a variety of methods. You don't want to use the exact same method, so you don't want to call them 24 hours, call them 3 days, call them in 7 days, call them in 14 days. You don't want to use all the same follow-ups. You want to change them up. So you may use some emailing, you may use some texting, and texting is highly effective from a standpoint of getting them on to a conference call or getting them to a meeting. So a text message first thing in the morning, the day of a meeting, is a great way to remind them, oh, by the way, tonight's meeting's at 7 o'clock at the Marriott Hotel, blah, 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 I'll look forward to seeing you. A text message about 10 to 15 minutes prior to a conference call is the best timing to get somebody a reminder to get on the conference call. If you do that first thing in the morning, for some reason the call gets forgot. So it's first thing in the morning for somebody going to a presentation or a meeting, and about 10 to 15 minutes before. And texting is great for that type of a follow-up. Phone messages are top 3 ways. You can leave a 3-way on a answering machine. So you don't always have to get somebody on the phone. If you call with a 3-way ready for somebody and you don't get an answer, you can leave that message on the phone. Mail is a great way to follow up. We get so much junk mail, but we rarely get someone following up from a mail standpoint. It's just a little simple note card that says, hey, appreciate your time at looking at Zija and look forward to chatting again down the road. Whatever it is, a mail piece actually goes very well. You can also mail out a flyer. We're so used to emailing, and emailing is simple and easy, and there's absolutely cases where you're going to do emails. You may even drop them into our email drip campaign in our back offices with the ZIP program, so that they get an email every few days about the business or about our products, that you can choose the campaigns that you want to put them into, so that they have application. But there's something about the mail, just literally sending something. Instead of sending them a flyer, emailing them a flyer about your next event, send them a little note in the mail with the information on your next event. It's just a different way and a different approach. But the important thing is to mix up the follow-up. We tend to get into the tendency of sending the same type of follow-up. If we're an emailer, we're constantly emailing them. If we're a phone person, we're constantly phoning them. Mix it up. Send them different ways of keeping in contact with them, and spread it out. It's intense in the beginning, and then spread that follow-up out. And the last question that she asked was, what do I say, right? So I've gone through some of the things and some of the things that you can say specifically, but what's more important than what do I say is how I say it. So I say it with a strong and confident voice. I don't get defensive in how I'm answering questions when they ask questions. I'm not a deer in the headlight when they ask questions. And how do you accomplish that? How do you get to the point where you're strong and confident, and how you're not defensive when they ask the question, is this network marketing, or is this this pyramid thing? How do I not have a deer in the headlight when they ask questions? Well, it's practice. The questions become the same, and it's just literally practice. It's trial and error. Do it more. You're going to be bad before you're good. It's the same as any other skill. I mean, the skill of and the skills that you have in network marketing, it's all about practicing them. It's no different than the skill of driving. I mean, you were pathetic when you first started. The skill of cooking. How many things did you burn and mess up and undercook or overcook or whatever when you first started to develop the skill of cooking or baking? Playing an instrument. Like, heaven forbid, if you think back to the days that you learned to play an instrument, or maybe you've got some kids or grandkids that are learning now, and you listen to the practice and you think, like help. And then over time and practice and trial and error, all of a sudden there's like a beautiful piece of music that you can actually recognize what they're playing. It's all about learning the skills here. And the question really is, am I willing to go through the awkward moments? Because learning to use the phone, learning to find Waldo, there's going to be some awkward moments. There is no question about it. The phone is, for some of you, going to be this big, scary, hairy monster that weighs 5,000 pounds that you want nothing to do with. But are you willing to go through the awkwardness of figuring out how to be efficient at the skill to achieve success? That's really the question. Are you willing? And that's really the difference between where you are right now and where you want to be, or where you look at your leadership and the people that you are following and mentoring, is the fact that they've gone through more awkwardness, and they were willing to practice and practice and practice, and they were willing to look for Waldo and have success. So let's open it up and see if you guys have any questions or any upcoming events that you want to talk about. Hold on here. Okay, guys. Questions or upcoming events you'd like to announce today?
Good morning, Karen. This is Elizabeth Alexander. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. I just wanted to remind everyone that we're having weekly events at the Flamingo Hotel in Santa Rosa, California. There was an event last night. I went the week before. It was an amazing group of leaders, about 20 of us. Everybody coming together, working together, and to be on the One Team Worldwide events calendar every Wednesday in Santa Rosa, California at the Flamingo Hotel.
And what's the time?
It's at 7 p.m. There's going to be a nutritional lecture that starts at 6:30. This amazing woman that works with Dr. Plant, and she's going to give a nutrition lecture, and then the opportunity meeting is made by Molly and Ed, and then there's 40 years of experience in network marketing.
Awesome. And those events you're going to have regularly posted on this media event board?
Every Wednesday in Santa Rosa, California.
Awesome.
Karen, can you hear me?
I can.
No.
Larry in Atlanta, and I would like to announce that we today on the relationship on the River. got Black Diamond, you got Big Black Diamond, Mike Campbell. I forget how he does. No, that was good. That was good.
It's noisy, Hazel, but it's... Sorry, Hazel, it's noisy. It's down in Atlanta, and what's the date again?
Saturday with Triple Down Will Weaver, Black Diamond, Mike Campbell, Triple Down
Awesome. February 8th in Atlanta, and I'm assuming that that'll be on the event board also.
104 years old. That's correct. I'm going for a deep in church and I got to do something.
All right. Anybody else?
70. Okay, I guess. I'm going to your name. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a recording?
And, yeah, if she was
I will, it's real hard to hear about somebody talking on a telephone conversation that we're listening to some gentleman, so it's hard to hear this morning. If you're talking to somebody on the phone, please hit mute again, because I've got the lines open. Somebody else, announcement?
Hi, Karen. This is with, Kim from Central Indiana. You recorded calls, is there a way we can see the recording?
I occasionally get a recorded call of this. I don't get all of them, but I do get some of them that I do have the recordings for. So if you want to send me an email, you can either do that through Facebook or through my email account, which is Karen@abundance@growthcreator.com. So you can either go into Facebook and send me a message, or Karen@abundance&growthcreator.com, and I will send you, ask for a specific recording, and I can send it to you if I have it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Karen, David Adams in Frederick, Maryland. What do you use to actually track your follow-ups?
I keep a journal, so some of you would have heard Debbie trading a couple of weeks ago, and that journal is literally, it's 8 by 10, it's bound, so it's not loose or anything like that, and the first time I called someone, I put their name, where I got their information, their phone number, and their geographic location, so I can kind of make sure of the time zone that I'm calling at an appropriate time, and then I leave 8 or 10 lines blank to do my follow-up, and so I literally track that follow-up. So if I put somebody on a 3-way phone call with someone, I write notes about that. If I send them specific information, I write down what it is I sent them. If I learn information about them through our discussion, I write that information in the tracking. So I'm keeping notes on them so that I'm able to go back and literally 2 years from now, I can call a prospect. In fact, I did one yesterday, and I called her the first time we talked was in 2004, and I was able to, ask if she was with that company or if she was, still working in the job that she, so I was able to say a lot of things to her that immediately she probably has forgotten me because it's ages ago that I talked to her, right? But I'm bringing up information about herself, and so she's quickly going, well, we've obviously talked, right? And so that's the benefit of keeping those fantastic journals. And so the other thing I do is I date every 3 or 4 pages. I'll put today's date at the top of the page, so I kind of have an idea of when that journal is, and then I just literally number those journals. So I started with 1, and now I have zillions of journals, and I keep them dated, and I can go back to them at any point in time, pull out a journal and flip through them, and that's what I was doing yesterday, and that's why I made this one particular call. And I put big red stars beside people that I think are Waldos, so that they weren't particularly ready at that moment, but through the interaction that I had with them, I thought these guys could be Waldos. It's not right now, but down the road, and so those are the ones that I follow up with. Could I follow up with the thousands of people that I've talked to? Never in a million years could I follow up with all of them. I've got to have a method of picking the ones that I'd like to stay in contact with.
Did you schedule your reappointments or recalls on the computer or in the phone?
I have a day timer, so I have a day timer that I put those follow-up calls into. So if I'm talking to somebody today and we say that we're going to talk on Monday at 10 o'clock, then I put 10 o'clock Monday and the person's name, and then I follow up in that method.
Thank you so much. Raise my hand.
Yeah, everything's like this. I'll tell you why it's that way is that I started doing this business when I had small children. So I had small children and I had to be mobile, and we didn't have the technology that we have today. Because remember, it's 23 years ago that I started into the industry. So yeah, I'm pretty old school when it comes to that. I've got a day timer, and that's how I schedule the calls that I'm making outbound from a follow-up standpoint. I've got my journal that keeps track of all the existing contacts that I'm in process with. And then I have a 3-ring notebook like you would have, like have in high school. And that's what is my giant Post-it note. So instead of having a bunch of Post-it notes everywhere, if I'm dealing with somebody on the team that has an issue that I need to follow up with, it's in that book. If I'm, on a 3-way, I will always write down the consultant's name that's put me on the 3-way and the prospect's name that I get during the introduction, because, by the time you've done multiple 3-ways within the day, you can forget who you're even on the phone with. So I always write that in, so it's just like a giant Post-it note. So that's another piece that I have constantly with me.
Great.
So those are the
Thank
pieces.
you so much.
You're welcome.
Love your presentations on Thursday. I just love them.
Thank you.
This is Shaq. I would like to know, can we do that in our back office and the contact list in our back office as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I use the contact list. I don't put all of my contacts into the list, but if I've got somebody that we've been kind of going back and forth, I think they're a good prospect, but they're really not doing their side of the chess game, I'll drop them into the back office contact and put them on an email campaign. So that means, I've followed up with them, let's say, 24 hours, and then I followed up with them at 3 days, and they still haven't looked at the information I sent them. I'll drop them into, if I think that there's potential with them, I'll drop them into the email campaign from the back office standpoint.
Okay, thank you, because I also put the notes in there, because every call I make, I put them in there, I'll take the notes, and I tag it to that particular date, because you can tag it.
Yeah, absolutely, and you could do that at your back office. Like I said, I'm like old school, and it was just based on the fact that I did it with small kids when I was young, and so I had to be portable. I had to be able to be at a baseball game, or I had to be, wherever, and I had to have portability, and we didn't have the contact programs that we have from a technology standpoint. So I'm just old school.
Wow. That's great. Thank you very much for all your support. If I don't make any calls, I call you because you're so great. I appreciate it so very much.
Thank you. I appreciate the feedback. I love doing this on Thursdays. It's my way to give back to an industry that has treated me so well, and a company that has been an absolute fantastic new home for me.
Thank you very much again, because you always give back 1,000%, and I really appreciate that. I'm new to the business.
You're welcome. Who else is out there? Any other last questions before we hang up this morning? I can hear you. I missed that. What did you say? Recorded so I can listen to it. Recorded. Sometimes I have recordings, so sometimes I get recordings sent to me. There are some of the consultants that get on the call that will record it, and so I sometimes do. I don't always. If there's a call that you particularly would like the recording of, then send me a message and I'll send you the recording. I just ask that you don't post it anywhere public. When I'm doing these, I'm just, I'm just sharing with you. So I don't have any pre-planned, written out word for word what I'm going to say to you, and so I don't like to get information, put out where people, may perceive it wrongly. So I just ask that you don't share it publicly. If you want to listen to them, then great. Absolutely, we'll send it to you. Okay?
Okay, can you give me the email address once more?
Sure. You can either go into Facebook and email me through Facebook, or you can send it directly to my email account, which is Karen@abundanceandgrowthcreator.com, and the end is spelled out AND. So Karen@abundanceandgrowthcreator.com. All right, I'm going to let you guys go. It's been a long one this morning. Appreciate you hanging in, and look forward to chatting again next week. Bye.
Thank you. Hang on, gentlemen.
Hurry up.
Thanks, Sandra Rose.